Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Betty Harrison, and she's going to tell us about her near-death experience. Hi, Betty. Now, you've never told your story before publicly, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Well, I appreciate you contacting me and giving us a chance to hear your story.
Well, I'm hoping it will help some, and it certainly makes me feel good to tell my story.
Okay. So start wherever you like and take as long as you like, okay?
Okay, thank you very much. I guess it starts about 11 years ago. I had been caring for my husband who had been bedbound for 5 years. I had lost my son the previous year to cardiac sarcoidosis. He was 34, and I was working a full-time job. And at 71, it was a lot on my plate. I cared for him in the morning. Before I went to work, some days I would have to come home and take care of some personal issues he had. And then I would run back to work and then, of course, start the day over again. And I really was not taking care of myself. I had no time, I had no energy, and quite honestly, I was totally exhausted. One night I had come home from work and I had to put out the trash. The date was December 19, 2011, and it was a cold winter night, and I suffer from asthma. The cold air, I have a problem breathing sometimes when it's cold or damp. And I had run out to take out the trash, and I have to say I was always running, and I couldn't get my breath. So I ran back in the house and grabbed my inhaler, which I always kept in my purse, and I took an inhalation, and nothing was happening, and I couldn't breathe. So I ran into the living room where my husband was, and I said, call 911, I'm going to die. And he looked at me like, what do you mean? He couldn't understand what I was trying to tell him. So I felt panicked, and I picked up the phone on the desk and punched 911. And that's all I can remember. I was gone. I understand the ambulance came and took me to the hospital. And from what I was told after, they intubated me in the ambulance. But I have no memory of anything after I said I can't breathe until the next afternoon. I found myself in the hospital and my daughter was standing next to me. And I thought, what happened? And the doctor was there and said, you had a very traumatic event. You had a cardiac arrest. And I said, I don't know. I think I had an asthma attack. And she said, well, we're doing a lot of tests and we'll find out what happened. So I was confused. I didn't know what happened. I don't know when I got to the hospital, how I got to the hospital, but they ran a lot of tests, breathing tests, heart tests, every test you can imagine, and they couldn't find anything wrong. So they discharged me the next day. I went home and took care of what I needed to do. And of course, I was exhausted and tired, and I went into my family room and sat down on the sofa, and I couldn't think what happened. I had time that was missing that I couldn't remember, and it really bothered me. And I just closed my eyes sitting on the sofa like, what happened? And all of a sudden it came to me. I remembered feeling a jolt, and it was dark. And all of a sudden I remembered seeing bright colors of purple and green. It wasn't like light bulbs. It was like a satiny, shiny glow, but it was all purple and greens. And I felt very calm and very peaceful. And my brain wasn't functioning. I guess I wasn't thinking about it. It just felt good. And then I heard a voice it was a male voice in my head say to me, do you want to stay here with Chris, or do you want to go back to be with Andrea? I remember those words after all these years, exactly those words. And the
Chris
voice
was
in my,
Chris was your son that passed.
Chris was my son that passed, and Andrea was my daughter, is my daughter.
Mhm.
And I said, in the voice in my head said, I have to go back to be with Andrea. She needs me. And that's all that I can remember of my event. But I knew I had to go back to be with her. She had just lost her brother. She couldn't lose her mother. Her father was disabled, and I was really all she had. And that was my near-death experience.
Okay. Did you start telling people about this right away, or how did you?
Not for a long time. It took me several years before I could bring myself to tell someone, because to me, I was still in awe of it. I couldn't believe this happened. I've had spiritual experiences before, which were wonderful, but I couldn't believe I was given a gift. At the time, I was seeing a medium, and I told him about this. And he said, he always called me honey. He said, honey, you were given an amazing gift. And I've always thought of it as a gift to be here and to be with my daughter and help my daughter and enjoy the life that I have. 2 weeks after my experience, my husband had to go into the hospital for a leg amputation. And they told me at the time, I had taken care of him for 14 years. They told me at the time that this is over your head. You can't do this anymore. And they said, you have to find a facility for him. And at that point, I was able to take a deep breath and begin to enjoy some of my time here. So it was ironic that it had to happen 2 weeks after. I felt every day, I don't know how I'm going to do tomorrow. Every day I would wake up and think, how am I going to do this? And it was taken care of for me. But it took me years to tell people. And once I did, I found that they loved hearing my story. It gave them a thought that we will know. They do know that we will be with our others. And I know I was with my son. I know it.
Did you feel his presence, or?
I felt his joy that I was able to go back to be with Andrea. And after a couple years, she had 2 children, and I have been taking care of them since they were 2 months old. One is 3 now, and one is 7. And I know that I had a purpose to come back to be able to take care of her children and to help her and spend time with these beautiful grandchildren I never knew I'd have or thought I'd have. So it was, I brought people to tears telling them my story, not meaning to, but I feel like I have such a gift to share, and that there is the other side, and we will be there.
What was the voice like that told you you
The
could go back?
voice was, it was a male voice, and it was very monotone. There was no, it just sounded like a guy. I didn't know who it was. I did not recognize the voice, but it was a male voice. It was very monotone, and the question was very direct. Do you want to stay here with Chris, or go back. And the thought that he said, do you want to stay here with Chris, meant that I was with Chris.
Mhm.
He wouldn't have said, do you want to stay here? So I really felt that I was with him.
Did that help you with the grief of the loss of him after that?
Oh, immensely, immensely beyond. I can't describe the relief I had knowing that I was with him, and he's with me. I know he's with me every day. He helps me a lot. So yes, it did give me a lot of comfort, and I feel like every day is a gift here, and I do cherish every day.
Would you like to share some of the spiritual experiences you had?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea how to start. On the day my son passed was February 10th. It was 16 years ago on Friday. So this is ironic that we're doing this just 3 days after his anniversary. But the very first day of his date of his death, the year after his birthday, I was standing in the shower and I was crying, which I did. I cried in the shower all the time. And I just said, Chris, please send me a sign. Let me know you're here. People have said I'm crazy and then bizarre, but I had an apartment in my house for my in-laws who lived with me for 10 years. I had a father-in-law who had Alzheimer's, and then a mother-in-law who lived with me for 10 years after he passed. She was not a good person, but we had an apartment there, and we had a smoke detector downstairs. And after they passed, my son had just gone through a divorce. And I told him, why don't you come home and live with me till you get yourself together. You can have the apartment and just, it's your place. So he was 6'4" and very tall, and he would set off the detector by cooking. And I'd say, just remove it, take it down. I'm not worried about a fire. Just take the smoke detector off the ceiling. And he did that. He put it on the table. And the morning of his birthday, I heard a smoke detector going off. And I was upstairs getting ready for work. I came down into the kitchen, and my husband at that time was in a wheelchair, and he used to cook all the time. And I said, did you set off a smoke detector? He said, no, I'm not cooking. So I kept hearing it, and the beep you get all the time when it's beeping. And I ran down into the basement. The smoke detector was on the table and it was beeping. Now you can't, it's hard to explain that to people. They said, oh, well, no, there were no batteries in it. I'd taken the batteries out. There was no explanation for that, except that he said, Mom, I'm here.
And the timing.
The timing, the morning of his birthday. And I asked for the sign.
Yeah.
And he sent me several. But at the moment, I'm still thinking about the biggest gift, and that was the gift that I could come back and stay a little, however long I have, to me is overwhelming.
Gratitude is powerful.
Extreme gratitude. And I do cherish every day. And I'll be 81 next month, and I really pray that I can stay here a little longer so that I can care for my grandchildren. They're very important to me, and I'm important to them. And it does help my daughter, since she works every day, to know that they're with me and cared for.
And it's so good for the kids to be with grandparents and such daycare. Strangers.
Well, yeah, and of course during COVID, I had them both every day and he was 3, she was an infant for 2 years, and I was tired, but I was still grateful that I was here to do it.
Now your son, he died of a cardiac arrest?
Actually, it was an autoimmune disease called cardiac sarcoidosis.
Oh.
Undetected. He was 34. He was living with me. Actually, the night that he passed, I could never leave my husband alone. I was always worried about a fall. He would need me. So I stayed home. I was work and home, and the grocery store, always in a hurry. And this one Valentine's Day, 16 years ago, my brother was having a party, and he lived about an hour and a half away from me. He said, "Why don't you come?" I said, "I can't come. I can't leave. I can't leave Jerry." And my son had been living with me at the time, and he said, "Why
His
don't you
name's
go?"
Jeremy?
Jerry was my husband.
Jerry? Jerry was your
Yeah,
husband, okay.
he just passed in June of this year.
Okay.
So my son said, "Mom, why don't you go? I'm not going out tonight. I'll watch Dad. You go and have a good time. Stay over at Uncle Joe's," because it was like an hour and a half drive, and it would be dark when I'd be coming home. So that was my first night out in many, many, many years. And I had been at my brother's party and stayed over. The next day, I received a phone call from my husband, and he said, "Chris didn't make it." And I said, "What do you mean Chris didn't make it?" He said, he's gone. And I couldn't understand that either. I mean, I left a healthy 34-year-old who worked out every day. He didn't smoke, he didn't drink, he didn't do drugs. What do you mean he didn't make it? And of course, I had my brother bring me home. I couldn't function. And I got to my house, and the coroner was there and the police, and it was horrible. And it happens that morning that he had called somebody to look at his TV set. He had a technician coming, and they went downstairs and they found him, and he was gone. The one day that I leave my house, my son left.
It's like you were spared from that.
Later, I felt that was how it happened, that he couldn't have done it while I was home. And of course, my husband couldn't go down the stairs because of his disability. And the technician came up and told my husband that something happened to your son. And that's when they called 911 and the ambulance and everyone else come. But the coroner was there, and she told me, she said, "I want you to know," she said, "he didn't know what happened. His heart just stopped and he collapsed, and it was instantaneous. And apparently it took 7 months to get the diagnosis. That they couldn't find out what took him. And apparently they had to send his specimen to many different locations to to do the autopsy to find out what he went from. And it was diagnosed as cardiac sarcoidosis. And my doctor told me that there was nothing they could have done, even if it had been diagnosed, but it was never said. You can't diagnose it when it's the heart. I guess sarcoidosis can affect the eyes and the lungs, but when it's the heart, it's very hard to diagnose. So he left the night that I wasn't home, the first time in I can't tell you how many years. So
I mean, just outsider looking in, it just seems like the way it was all set up. I mean, that you weren't, like, you were spared from finding him. And
I don't know how I could have recovered from that. I had lost a twin brother at the age of 36 to a suicide. And that traumatized me for many, many years. But I can't imagine my son passing was beyond my comprehension. I don't know how we survive it, except that the signs he sent me, and the fact that I had to be here for my daughter. I had to be strong for her, and just go through the days.
And then your NDE, to bring you comfort and knowing that he's okay.
Oh, I know he's okay. I know he's okay. And I know he laughs at me a lot because I talk to him every day. And he had a quirky sense of humor, and I'll do something. I'll say, "What do you think about that one, Chris?" And I know he's laughing, and I know he's so happy that I made the choice to come back. He would have wanted me to do that. So, and I know it was the right choice. And I can't tell you how many times I wanted to die. I can't count the times I prayed to give me strength to get through tomorrow, to get through today. My husband had a lot of hospitalizations during the time. And I had this full-time job, which I had to work because I had to pay the bills. And I was totally exhausted. I didn't know how long I was going to be able to continue. But my daughter had told me, like several times, she'd say, "Mom," she talked to me on the phone, "you're wheezing." And I go, "Oh yeah, I guess so." And I just take a puff of my inhaler, okay, I can take care of this. And because she didn't live near me either, I was pretty much by myself. But I guess the asthma, I finally, maybe it was meant to be that way. I believe everything is meant for a reason. But my doctors couldn't.
Your husband losing his leg, ended up being a blessing for you to get some.
Well, it was. And my doctors, my family doctor had known for 28 years. He said, "I don't know." He said, "What the heck happened to you?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "I don't know how you're sitting across from me." He said, you were gone. You were gone. And although probably the fact that I had the choice, I don't know. I still can't understand that part. Was I gone, or was I sort of gone? I could have gone. I don't know. I don't know much about that. But
these leave us with a lot of questions, don't they?
Oh, incredible questions that I just ponder, but I don't worry about. I don't worry about that. After the near death, I don't worry about very much. It's taken a lot of pressure off, because I believe that I'm supposed to be here, and when it is my time, the next time, that'll be okay. I'll be ready. And my mother lived to be 101, so I might have some good more years left. And but I don't worry.
You look healthy.
Well, I'm doing pretty good for somebody my age. I keep active, which these kids keep me active.
Yes.
And happy and joy. I have a lot of joy. They make me laugh. I don't sit. I'm always moving. So I think happy things. I don't deal with depression. I've had depression. I go through depression like everyone else. But then I think, what's wrong with you? You've got everything. I have been gifted. My daughter didn't have her first child till she was 40. And her second one was a complete accident at 43. So, and when I said I never thought I'd be a grandparent, well, heck no, not with my daughter who took her time to do what she did. So, and I'm really grateful that I have the health to be able to do what I'm doing for her, because we're very close, and those kids are my life.
That's awesome. Well, you're fortunate that you have your health and you get to watch your grandkids. I know so many people that don't get to see their grandkids, and it affects their health too.
Well, I told everybody, a lot of my friends that were shut in for those 2 years with COVID, and we're all 80, 81. Our years are coming to an end sooner than a lot. But I said, I don't know what I would have done without these children. Every day I got them both, and I took care of them and tried to entertain them and had fun and bonded. And after they were gone, I was exhausted. But that was a good thing because I didn't need to go out. I didn't even think about going out. My daughter ordered all my groceries. So I didn't, she would deliver my groceries to me. For 2 years, I think I only got 3 tanks of gas in my car, but I didn't feel deprived like a lot of my friends were deprived. They couldn't go to dinner. They couldn't see their friends. They couldn't see their family. Heck, I got to see the most important people in my life for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I never got COVID.
Yeah, good.
Although they all did. I didn't get it for some reason.
My husband's mother, they lost my husband's brother when he was 5 years old to leukemia. And so, I'd always heard about him. And then I had read a book, Dr. Alan Bakken, called Induced After Death Communication. And in the back, it told how to do this little technique and where you could connect with someone that has passed. And I set my husband down at the kitchen table and I said, well, let's try it. And you pick up, I use this little, I think I use a ruler or something. You do these little eye movements with them, and then you proceed and go on. And so we were focusing on his brother that had passed. And, so his brother was 5, so my husband was 6 when his brother passed, and he could never remember what he looked like. And if I had seen a picture, it had been black and white, and I don't remember. So I'm assuming that he's light complected and light blue eyes, like the whole rest of the family. And as I'm doing these little eye movements, something catches my eye, and here across my walls, blank wall in my kitchen, was this wheat field, and this guy, like in his late teens, running through this wheat field. And he looked Indian, and he stops and turns and looks at me and smiles and turns, keeps going. And I'm like, I look over at my husband. He's got tears coming down his eyes. Same time I saw that, he had a memory of his brother when he was little. And I said, did your brother have darker skin and like brown eyes, like an Indian? He says, I don't know. He says, but I just saw my brother. He seen him as his little. And so I went to his mom and I asked, and I said, was he darker skinned and like kind of like Indian and brown eyes? She says, yeah, he was. I was like, I had no way of knowing that. I know I saw him. So, on her deathbed, I knew that she was going to see him again, because a year before that, her heart surgery at the hospital, she had just come out of surgery. They had her like this ICU for a temporary time. And till she got all checked out and went to regular room. And we walked in the ICU room. We'd never been in that room with her before. And it's all glass, this whole wall of windows. And you can see the roof of the hospital. And they have they're growing like ferns and whatever out there. And it was getting dark. And I went over to see her, but something kept catching my eye. And I walked over to the window and I'm like, I know he's out there. Like I knew her son was like waiting for her. And he was like, you guys had her long enough. I want mom now. He thought she was coming home, and he was there waiting to take her home. And she wouldn't. And she said that she just wanted 1 year more to have more time with her great grandchildren, to bake cookies and things. So I made sure that I set up play dates and had all the grandkids there and bake cookies. And she had her 1 year, and then she passed.
Well, my husband, I've believed, I've had signs through many, many years. There's too many for me to even talk about, but my husband never, ever believed it. And he was in hospice care for 3 months before he passed. He had been bedridden for 13 years, but he was in hospice for 3 months. So I was there. I mean, I would have the kids all day, and then I would go visit him every night and stay with him until he went to sleep. He didn't want me to leave. And when we knew he was going to be going soon, I whispered in his ear and I said, you better send me a sign. He never believed any of the stuff I told him. So that was the last words I said to him. After he passed, my daughter and I wanted to send the nurse that took care of him. She was extra special, a little thank you gift. So I said, why don't we just give her like a music box, something small that she could have, that we wanted to thank her. And she really liked him a lot. And if she wants to put it in a drawer, it won't take up too much space. So I said to my daughter, I said, you pick out the music box. She liked the idea. She said, okay, I'll pick it out. So she was going through Amazon and she found a music box and she said, how about this one? And it was a gold music box and it had a dragonfly on the top of it in gold and crystals, very small, but it was cute. And I said, yeah, that sounds nice. And the music it played was appropriate. So she said, I think I'll order it. And I said, yeah, order it now. It was like 11 o'clock at night. So she ordered the music box. And next thing I know, she sent me a text message, a picture of a bug. And I'm thinking, what in the world is she sending me a bug picture for? And she wrote back and she said, this is on our ceiling in the family room. I said, I don't know what it is. She said, it's a dragonfly. And I said, a dragonfly? What is a dragonfly doing in your house? She said, I don't know, but it's on the ceiling. And she took a picture of it. She says, it's huge. Truthfully, I've never seen a dragonfly except, on rare occasions. They're not around where we are. And so her husband said, these are, you can't do anything. These are endangered. You have to let them go. You can't. So they went to bed. The next morning they came down and the dragonfly was on the back of the chair that she sits in at the dining room table. Just on the back of the chair. And they came and Craig put his finger up against this dragonfly and it got on his finger and it flew out the door. I can't believe my husband did that, but it was him. It's too bizarre to be a coincidence that she would order the dragonfly music box and there would be one in her house.
I think dragonflies have some spiritual significance.
They do. They have a very spiritual significance, and that's why we picked the dragonfly.
Okay.
It has to do with your future, and it's a good sign. It's a good sign. So yeah, that was just.
I think there's a movie called that. I think it's Kevin Costner. It's not a true story, but it's a really good movie, and it highlights NDEs in it, and yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, is dragonfly.
So I told my husband even before that, he used to laugh at me because I would go to mediums, and I had joined a spiritual circle with a medium that I was very friendly with. He invited me to join their group. They got together once a month, and we just discussed mediumship and just the spiritual things that most people think we're crazy if we talk about it. So we're in a group of crazies, and it's comforting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it brings you comfort.
Yes. Oh, yes. You know that you're not. I know. I don't question. And I do. If I say something, I'll say to someone, especially like even with my near death, I like to share that, and I'll say, look, I don't know if you believe in this or not. Let's preface it by saying that, because that's okay if you don't believe. But I want to explain what happened to me. And they all say, oh my God, that's beautiful. I'm so glad you told me. They want to hear it. I think they really want to hear it. So to me, it's a gift to give the gift of knowing.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have these experiences and haven't acknowledged them yet. They haven't, like you didn't talk about yours for a long time.
Oh, for years. I knew it happened, and I felt it. I know it did, but I just somehow I wasn't ready to share it with anyone. It was maybe too personal. I don't know. I don't know the reason, but
Yeah.
once I began, I actually shared it with a doctor. One day I went, I don't know, I had to go to the doctor, and he just looked at me like, oh my gosh. He said, thank you so much for telling me your story. He was, I think he was almost brought to tears
Really?
because it meant so much to him for him to hear it. He said, I know a lot of people that, would not accept it, but he says, I thank you for telling me. So,
Well,
I
that's
said,
good that he responded that way.
well,
That's-
yeah,
As it feels good to you too. I know, because I told my doctor 30 years later after mine, and it meant a lot for him to say, I know what you're saying. And I've come to believe exactly what you're telling me over the years of practice.
yeah, I think the medical field knows more than they tell us to. I mean, they don't know who, we don't know who can accept it and who can't. And that's why I always say, I don't know if you believe it or not, but I want to share something. It kind of lets them off the hook if they think I'm crazy. And I go, it's okay. I don't care. I don't mind.
I'm looking forward to this Thursday. I think it's just in theaters one day, the Jesus Revolution. And this morning I was listening to some clips where that man that the movie's about was when he was still alive and talking about it. And I heard him tell the person interviewing him that he had wanted to become a doctor. And he realized that he wanted to become a preacher instead. And I believe this voice had told him, well, you could become a doctor, because he prayed about it. And, you could save lives, but eventually those people will die. But if you become a minister, you'll be helping people live for eternity. I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh boy, that's pretty heavy.
Yeah,
Oh boy,
that is awesome. Only God could say something like that.
That could really make you think, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've had so many blessings and gifts along the way. And I do know that I've lost both my other brother just passed away. And then my husband, and I've had my mother a long time, which was a gift for me to have her in excellent health till the day she took a nap and went to sleep, and she was gone. And she lived by herself and took care of herself, and her mind was as sharp as a tack. And she used to say to me, I don't know why I'm still here. I'm ready to go home. I'm kind of tired, and all my friends are gone. All my family's gone. And I said, Mom, you're here because I need you. And I really did need her. And she passed. My husband went into the facility in January, and she passed that April.
Huh.
I think she believed I didn't really need her. I mean, my need, I still needed her, but not as much. And she just took a nap one day. She always said, I hope I just go to sleep. She got it.
That's the way to go.
She got it for sure. But
yeah, because she lost a husband and son too.
oh, she lost a husband and a son. Yes, she did. And my mother and I have kind of parallel lives, I believe, because my father died rather young, and my husband had a stroke when he was 60. It was not a stroke that he should have had. He had an infected toe because he cut his toenails too short, and he was diabetic. So, of course, he didn't feel it. And the toe got infected. And I would tell him, you really ought to go to the doctor and get that looked at. It's not healing. And he'd say, just don't nag me. And then he started to swell pretty much. And he said, I guess I'll go. So the doctor put him on antibiotics. And he said, if it doesn't heal, come back. And then we might have to do antibiotics, we might have to, do them intravenously. So he got the antibiotics, and his foot kept swelling and swelling and swelling. And you could see it was bright red. He couldn't walk on it. And I said, you really think you ought to go to the doctor? Well, don't nag me. And for several months, he was losing weight without being on a diet. And I stopped saying go to the doctor because you only do that so much. And one night he said, I don't feel too good. I feel like I've been hit by a truck. Got a terrible headache. And I said, do you think you'll see the doctor tomorrow? And he said, well, it depends on how I feel. That night he had a stroke. He had sepsis, and a blood clot went to his brainstem and caused actually a pretty mild stroke. But he was in hospital for 6 weeks because of the sepsis, and then 6 weeks for rehab. But he refused to do rehab after that. So for 22 years, he deteriorated, because if you don't use it, you lose it. So eventually he couldn't get out of his wheelchair anymore. He couldn't stand. He lost all his muscle tone. And then one day he tried to stand up, and he fell and fractured his hip. And then they couldn't repair his hip because his bones were so brittle from all those years of no exercise and no circulation. So he became bedridden. And I had him, he was in a wheelchair for 9 years, and he was in bed in my home for 5 years. And he totally refused rehab. So the guy, I felt sorry for him, but he just wouldn't do it. I don't know why. I could never understand why he refused to.
Some men are stubborn.
Totally stubborn. Totally. He was in excellent health when this happened. His cholesterol levels were great. His heart was great. He was very active. He was, he was in good shape. And after 9 years in a wheelchair and 8 years, actually, he was in bed for 13 years. He refused to get out of bed in the rehab. He just laid. And I said, well, if he doesn't want to get up, that's up to him. He's a big boy. He can make his own decisions. So he laid in bed for 13 years. And I can't imagine. He developed diabetic retinopathy, so his eyes went. Of course, his hearing wasn't great. And it was all his choice. And I don't know why he chose that. I banged my head against the wall many times trying to figure it out. But it was his choice. But it's very sad to watch a very healthy 6'3", 240-pound man who was extremely active. He took a mild diabetic pill. That's it. Could have been around a long time. So I guess we make our choices somehow. But he was not very happy, obviously. Stubborn.
Yeah, my husband's dad is that way. So stubborn. He always has been. And when his mom was sick, she better get up and go make his dinner. She laid down one day after we took her to the doctor, and she went and laid down. And I kept going back and checking on her. She was cold. And I told my husband, I said, call the doctor. This woman's laying here and dying. And it was real hot outside. They didn't have air conditioning in their bedroom or their house. And she kept having us add more blankets, but she was freezing cold to touch. And I said, this woman's laying down to die here. And her husband kept telling her, get up and make lunch. He didn't want me making it. It's her job. He wouldn't eat what I made. So we ended up, she heard me arguing with him, and she got out of that bed and went in and made his dinner. And on her deathbed, she recalled that. And she said, I know I was dying that day. But, he wouldn't let her die. She had to get up and make his dinner.
Well, my husband was pretty much, I would come home from work and take care of him and get his needs, get his dinner, get him comfortable. I'd say, is there anything else you need? Okay, I'm going to go sit down and eat my dinner, because it's a long day. I mean, I would get up early and get his breakfast, pack him a bag for lunch. I had everything set up really well. I was 5 years we did that. And I would sit down to have my dinner, and I would hear the bell, which I gave him a bell, which was my own stupid fault. Gave him a bell to ring, and I heard the bell ring, and I went in and I said, what do you need? And he said, cover my feet. Guess what?
He couldn't do that. He couldn't cover his feet.
He didn't want to. He wanted me
He didn't
to do
want
it.
to.
He wanted me to do it. Yeah.
Oh, that's what
I don't know. I couldn't, it took a lot of patience, and I held my tongue because it wasn't going to do any good to say exactly what I was thinking about. So I would just cover his feet and say, okay, are you done? Do you need anything else? And then I would go eat my dinner. It's just the way it was. You can't change them. So you have to suck it up and do it.
My mother-in-law passed out, was laying on the floor in the living room early morning one day, and he come back stepped over her on his way to the bathroom and come back. It's like,
oh my God.
What are you doing on the floor?
Oh
Go
my
back to bed.
gosh.
Like,
What's wrong?
dummy,
What's wrong?
Yeah, he just had no compassion.
I have a really funny story to tell, which I guess we'll be sharing it with a lot of people, but it would put you in awe. I lived in Bethlehem, and I worked in Nazareth, and it was a 20-minute drive to get back to my house on a good day, without getting a ticket. And so he would call me at work and say, I need your help. And that meant that he would be on the bedpan, he couldn't get himself off, or he didn't want to. So I would run home from work, and I would take him off the bedpan and go back to work. And because I didn't want him on it, because it would stop his circulation and become painful. So I just did it. So this one day, he called me at work, and he said, I need your help. I said, okay, I'll be there as soon as I can. I got in my car, drove pretty fast home, had my own, I had it down to a real science. Run in the door, put my gloves on, tell him roll over. I could get it done in 5 minutes, because I had it down to a science. So I took care of him and sped back to work. An hour later, I got another phone call from him, and he said, I need your help. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, again? I mean, I've got a lot of work to do. It was a stressful job, and it was all dependent on me to do my job. So I said, okay, I'll be there. So I ran in the door, put my gloves on. I had my, my gloves handy, and I said, roll over. He said, no, that's not why I called you. And I said, well, why am I here? He said, I dropped the remote. See your mouth open, you dropped, right? Is that
Yeah. Men.
He dropped the remote, and I'm going, okay, you're watching Gunsmoke. He liked all those old movies. You're watching Gunsmoke. That's going to change in a half an hour. So the rifleman will come on next, but you need your remote. And he said, well, yeah, I need the remote. I gave him the remote. My blood pressure was probably at stroke level right there. I got in my car. I don't know how fast I went driving out of my development, but boy, if that cop had been there, I would have gotten a ticket, big time ticket, because I'm thinking, how inconsiderate can you be? It's just his needs were more important, I guess.
Well, it must be the Gunsmoke movies, because that's what my father-in-law watches too.
Really?
Those He-Man westerns where man
Oh my
run the
gosh.
world and the women were all damsels in distress. And yeah, they didn't
Isn't
treat
that
him
the
too good
truth?
in them movies either.
But that one really, really was a kicker for me. I thought, oh my God, do I believe this? So we've been married. We had been married when he passed last June. We were married 52 years. So, it was a long marriage, and but there were times when I still wanted to, let him have it. Even at that point, I thought, oh my God, I can't believe he did that.
I believe
But
my in-laws was just shy of their 60th when she passed.
yeah.
He's still alive.
Oh,
My
he
husband's
is.
brother. Yeah, my husband's brother takes care of him. We were,
I was going
and
to
then
say,
his
who cooks his
brother
meals
came
now?
and did it, which is fine
Wow.
because he didn't like me, and so he would buck me on everything. Wouldn't eat my cooking, and he would go out around the vehicles like he was going to take off, which he couldn't drive. One time he did sneak and drive when she's still alive. He ended up in the neighbor's yard, and we had the leg monitor in case he took off. And yeah, he's difficult.
I can relate to that, having a mother-in-law living with me for 10 years who was a raging alcoholic.
Oh, no.
And oh yes, and she did not like me. I would cook meals for her too. If I'd make something, I'd make extra, and I'd send it down when my father-in-law was there. Especially, he had Alzheimer's and he passed from lung cancer. But I loved him, and I would make food and send it down so she wouldn't have to cook. And I heard her on the phone talking to a friend of hers one night, and she said, she sends that food down here, it ain't fit to eat. And I'm thinking, well, guess what, you just got your last meal.
He took joy in picking up his plate and scraping it out to the dog in front of me.
No. Oh, that's terrible.
And I'm an excellent cook. I mean, my
I'm
kids
sure you are.
at their weddings, I've been asked to start a restaurant. I'm a good cook, so I know it's not my cooking.
No, it wasn't your cooking. That's what she would do. She'd say, she sends this food down here, ain't fit to eat. She uses that horrible garlic. Well, you know what? Not in everything, but I happen to like to cook with garlic when it's appropriate. But yeah, she wasn't like your father. She wasn't going to like anything I did. And she was just a very hateful woman. But I had her for 10 years. And my husband wouldn't talk to her. He didn't talk to his mother for 5 years because he despised her.
Oh. And
she was living in my house. And I had to take her to the doctor. I don't know how many times I've taken her to the doctor because she would fall, and I think she broke something. One time she did break a hip, and he said, there's something wrong with my mom. Would you go down and see what's wrong with her? She's screaming down there.
Oh my gosh.
I said, what do you mean? I had just come home from being with my mother. And he said, yeah, she's down there screaming. Would you go check and see what's wrong with her? So I went down, and it was a beautiful apartment. It was 1,200 square feet. So it wasn't a little dinky little room with a path. And I went down and I said, you okay? She said, nope. Nope. And I said, do you want to go to the doctor? She said, yep. Like I said, she wouldn't talk much to me, but I said, okay. I said, we'll get you to the hospital. We'll call an ambulance. And because I wasn't going to move, right? I was afraid of doing more damage. And so my husband, I said, we got to get your mom to the hospital. I said, she's hurt. He said, I'm not calling an ambulance. He said, I'll go get a wheelchair from somebody. This was horrible. I'll go get a wheelchair and you get her up the stairs. I'm thinking, how am I going to get her up? So I went across the street and asked my neighbors, 2 boys, to come over, and I had a dining room chair that we got her one, and they lifted her up by that. She had a fractured hip. And so she's in the hospital, and my husband said, damn it, she just ruined my dinner. I had I had a good dinner. This is before his stroke. He said, I was making paella and that's going to be ruined. I said, well, this is what happens. So I was talking to the doctor and he said, she's going to be staying here. He said, she's not going home. He said, look, her hip's broken. I said, well, I have to tell you, she's an alcoholic. And I don't know if that matters to what kind of medications you give her, but I just want you to know she's probably, had a few too many today. He said, well, thanks for telling me, because they could have, given her medication that with the alcohol would have not worked very well. So,
And for people that don't know, alcoholics are horrible when they get old.
she was mean. She was very mean. She was mean to my son. She was mean to my daughter. She was mean to me. And my husband, who was an only child, she adored him, but he wouldn't talk to her. He didn't talk to her for 5 years. And
She adored him.
Oh yeah, of course. He could do no wrong. But yeah, he was. And part of his narcissism, I believe, was because of her. He was everything, and he grew up being everything to.
Sounds like she rewarded his bad behavior.
Oh, absolutely. She didn't think anything was wrong with him. So anyway, she came back home and stayed for many, many more years. It's like, but I still did what I did because it's what you do. And I used to think how I would want to be treated if I were in that position. Somebody
told me some of us are natural born caretakers and others just aren't.
Well, I've been told I've been a caretaker.
I am too.
Yeah. And it's okay. I'd rather be, and I used to think to myself, as exhausted as I was, I used to think to myself, I would rather be the caregiver than the one being cared for.
Oh yeah.
I mean, let's face it, we wouldn't want to be them. I wouldn't. And I would want somebody to care for me the way I would care for someone. So yeah, I think it's who we are. But
it sounds like your husband didn't want anybody taking care of him either. I mean, he wouldn't go to the doctor.
Didn't. He didn't want anybody taking care of him at the home either. He waited for me for everything. I shaved his head because he had a beautiful head of hair, and laying in bed, it was hard to maintain. So I would shave his head because it was more comfortable. It was cleaner. I did his nails. I took care of his grooming. He wouldn't let anybody touch him. When near the end, he wouldn't let anybody feed him. I had to go feed him because he wouldn't let the nurses do it. And I would have the kids all day and then have to go over there and feed him. And it was, I don't know what the reason was. I would hope it was for a good reason, but I would like to think it was
my best friend. She's my age and her husband's like 72. And she's been taking care of him for about 15 years. He had a heart attack and we don't know. They call it severe depression. I don't know, but he just sat down in the chair and wouldn't get up again. He's got diabetes. His legs look awful. And she just has to do everything. Force him to get in the shower, come to the table and eat. He sleeps in a chair. He don't get out of the chair. He just watches TV all day. And it's been that way 15 years.
That's
he
how
don't talk to the grandkids. He don't talk to her hardly.
No. He whatever happened to him for 22 years, he kind of went into his own little world and I guess he liked it there. I don't know. He never tried to come out of that world. But it was hard to watch him and having to care for him was not easy. I mean, I had to bathe him. I had to do all the things for him, and work. And it was hard. So, and then after losing my son, after my son passed, his son passed, he refused to have me mention his name. Don't talk about him. He probably couldn't handle it. And so his way of handling and dealing with things was not dealing with things.
Was he this way before though?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. In fact, when his mother was dying, I told him, I said, your mom is not going to make it. She had a gangrenous bowel, and she had surgery, but she wasn't going to make it. And so she was 89. And I came home from the hospital after seeing her. I would go every day to see her. And I said, your mom's not going to make it. I said, do you want to go see her before she dies? I'll take you over. At that time, he was in the wheelchair. And I said, I'll take you over to see her. He said, no, he wasn't going to see her. And I said, okay, your choice. I said, I just want you to know, I'll take you. And he refused to go see her. And so it was
How did she deal with that? That was hard on her.
I would think, because she wouldn't tell me, but I would go every day. And then when they want to do other surgery, they said, no, it's not. I said, do you want another surgery? She said, no, I don't want any more. So she made the decision. I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't carrying that guilt. So I said, they want another operation? She said, no, I don't want to do it. I'm done. And she was, pretty much. So I said, is there anything you want me to do? What do you want me to do for you? She said, well, when I'm buried, I want to be buried. She's from Kentucky. I don't know if that matters or not, but I want to be buried in a real pretty nightgown. That's what they did. They got buried in nightgowns. I don't know. So I thought, okay, I'll take care of that. So I had gone to the store and I saw this most beautiful satin, blue satin, like an ice blue satin material. It was her style because she liked the ruffles and she wanted long sleeves because she said, I don't want to see my arms, because she was a stick. And I said, okay. And she liked that shirt look, the old country style. And so I bought this beautiful ice blue nightgown for her. And then she passed, and her funeral was already planned to go back to Indiana, where she lived. And she had picked her everything before she moved in with us, at the funeral home. And so anyway, we went down, horrible drive down to Indiana. And went into the funeral home, and here the nightgown was the exact color of the blue satin lining she had picked for her coffin. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is like, everyone would say to me, how'd you do that? I said, I don't know, it just happened. But he was deciding whether to go to the funeral or not. He didn't know whether he wanted to go, but he finally decided he would go, which was an ordeal for me to get him there, but we did it. So
my mother-in-law was very hurt when her youngest son, he was a late in life baby, didn't come to her when she was on her deathbed, because she was in hospice and they told her to go home and die. And we didn't know if it'd be months or if it was like a week and she was gone. And he knew that week that she wasn't doing well at all. And then we let him know that, she was about to pass, and he did not come. And he's only like 2 hours away. And the other son from Colorado, he was rushing as fast as he could, 24-hour drive, and he didn't get there in time. But she died, with a broken, not of a broken heart, but with a broken heart. Because she'd say, was I that bad of a mother?
I can't. Excuse me. I can't imagine how I would be destroyed. It would destroy me if my child did that. But on the other shoe, when my husband was in the hospital with his, they didn't think he would survive because of the infection in his blood infection sepsis was so bad. And my doctor told me, he said, we don't know. This is going to be a tough one. We don't know how he's going to make it. And so I said to his mother, I said, Jerry's really sick. I said, do you want to go see him? I'll take you. I can take you to see him. Do you want to go? And she said, no, I don't want to see him like that. What mother would not want to be there with her child that I told her, Bonnie, I said, I don't know. We don't know whether he's going to survive it. She wouldn't go. So, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. It's just how I feel, It didn't. I couldn't believe it. I said, well, anytime you want to go see Jerry, I said, I'll take you. That was the end of that conversation.
And to be honest, where would these people be without caretakers like us?
That's why we're there. I think that's why we're there. I remember I had a horrible story. I had a pet Yorkie, Toby. He was my love. He was 14 and I knew he wasn't doing well. I took him to the vet and he said, yeah, he's not, he doesn't have long, and you don't want to watch him, go. And he said, we should really put him to sleep. And I said, whatever you say. Is, I don't want to see him suffer. I've always said, I'll never let you suffer, Toby. So I had to make an appointment to take my darling Toby. And I had him in a blanket all day. I carried him around and till 3:00, I had to be there at 3. And I was, of course, I was crying all the time. Took him to the vet, had stayed with him and held him until he went to sleep. By myself, I cried in the parking lot for I don't know how long before I could get myself together to drive home. I came in the front door after this horrible event, and my husband, who was in the bed, in the hospital bed in the living room, I came in the door and he said, "What's for dinner?" I said, "What's for dinner? I haven't figured that out yet." I don't know. So when it's like, where's the empathy? Where's the it's not there. And I used to say to myself, he doesn't have it because he can't. I really believe he couldn't.
Yeah.
And it like I said, the apple didn't fall far. So that's how I manage, because I felt how can you get angry with someone that doesn't get it? It's a waste of energy.
Yeah,
And
my ex was that way when I had lost twins, died of dual pregnancy, had my NDE when I was 25, and they were due in December. And we were driving home one day, and all of a sudden it hit me what day it was. It was my due date.
Oh.
And they would have been born that day because that would, been scheduled C-section.
Yeah.
And I just hit me what day it was, and I started crying. And this is the first time he ever seen me cry about anything, because I did that in private. I wasn't the type person to let me cry about anything. And actually, I take it back. He had seen me cry maybe once or twice before, but so I just started crying, and he looked at me like, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'm like, this is my due date." I'm thinking how empty my arms were. Twins, I should have a baby in each arm. I said, "This is my due date," and tears started to come down. And he glared at me. He says, "When are you going to get over that shit?"
Yeah,
Some things you never forget. And that was one that I carried. Like, he just took half the love I had for him away.
Well, you lose respect. When my twin brother had taken his life, and one day I was crying, and my husband said the same thing: "Get over it. Just get over it." And I thought to myself, I'll never get over it. But he didn't have that ability to understand that that people like us have a caring soul. We'll never get over it. I never got over losing my twin brother. And in fact, my birthdays, I don't like to celebrate because he's gone. I had my twin, you had twins. There's a bond that is so special between twins. And I was so grateful to be part of a twin. But then when you lose that other part, there's a part of you gone.
We
So,
later, when I remarried, we adopted a sibling group of 5, and there were 8-year-old twin girls, identical
oh my
twins.
gosh.
And so I got my twins
Oh, you
finally.
got your twins.
Yes.
Oh,
And
that's
then when
wonderful.
they were older and had kids, I got a call one day from one of the twins. There's identical twin girls, but Samantha, she's such a sweet, she's my little mommy's girl, right? And Stephanie, she just didn't bond with anybody, and just different personalities, totally. But when they were both young mothers, one day, the Stephanie, she called me and told me Sammy died. She was in a car wreck and Sammy died. Sammy didn't die. She lied. She didn't have a car wreck either. Nothing's wrong with Sammy. She just wanted to hurt me
Oh my
just
gosh.
for the pleasure of wanting
Oh,
to hear me
that's,
cry on the phone, wanting to upset me. And it's
oh
just
my
like there's
God.
people like that that
How
just
cruel.
have
It's so,
no compassion,
it's
and they
cruel.
just
It's
like to
really,
hurt people, and like that's their job.
yeah, I mean, I used to ask my husband to go to the cemetery to visit my son once. I did it once and then never again. And it was, I was going to go over and I said, do you want to go to the cemetery with me? It was a couple months after he passed, and I used to go by myself, but this was on a weekend. And I said, do you want to go? I'm going to go over. I'm taking some flowers. He said, let me think about it. Well, that was his way of saying no. Let me think about it. He couldn't come out and say no, and he wasn't going to say yes. So I said, that's okay. I'll go. I'll see you later. But for some reason, and I used to think, I endured this grief so alone. And I guess I kind of was so disappointed that he wasn't there to share it. For some reason, he didn't. And it was very lonely trip.
Yeah. I think we can accept those relationships until those pinpoint moments where, okay, I have put up with a lot, but this
Mhm.
is crossing the line. This is just
Yeah.
beyond comprehension, the coldness.
Oh, it is, and my problem was I had to stay in it, and I found other ways to other people that cared about me, and I felt, you know what, I'm not going to change him. I'm not. This is. I lost respect. Of course, you lose respect, and I couldn't understand it. I guess more than anything, I couldn't comprehend that inability to be compassionate. Like I said, one day I was crying about Chris, and it was not too long after he died, and he said, shut the hell up about it. He's dead. And it was like a knife went straight into my heart and was twisted. And I promised myself to never mention his name in front of his father again. And he was a wonderful son. I mean, I am not just being a mother that says that. He was a wonderful son and caring and kind, and never gave me an ounce of trouble. He was so caring, and I don't know how his father couldn't feel some empathy for, at least for me. But one time I had a social worker come after one of his hospital stays. They asked me if I wanted a social worker to come and talk to him because he wouldn't get out of bed. And I said, sure, whatever you want to do, you send him over. I'm open to everything. I'll take whatever I can get. So a guy came over, a social worker came over to talk to Jerry, and because he wouldn't get up, he wouldn't do anything, he wouldn't help himself. And he said, they ask those questions, do you feel like you'll harm yourself? This is the standard questions they ask him all the time, and go through that list. And one of the questions on the list was, do you feel sad? And he was quiet for a minute. He said, yeah, I actually do feel sad. And I'm thinking, wow, we're getting an emotion here. You know what I mean? If anything, we're getting an emotion.
Was he sad you didn't fix his dinner?
No. Well, that would have been next. But he said, were you sad because you lost your son? Which was what most people would have expected the answer to be. And he said, no, I'm sad because I can't do what I used to do. And the social worker looked at me, and I looked at him, and I shrugged my shoulders, and he was like dumbfounded. That was the response he got. So when he finally left, I guess he felt there's nothing I can do here. So I walked him out the door and he said, look, he said, here's my card. You call me if you ever need anybody to talk to. Because he's thinking, man, this woman needs somebody to talk to.
Somebody's married to a narcissist here.
I never called him, but the fact that he acknowledged the fact that was that's not the normal response you would get. And after all of his hospitals, he had a lot of hospital visits. And every time they would send someone home, for rehab, and he wouldn't do it. And, they'd give him the exercises. He would do it for a minute and then say, I don't want to do it anymore. So this one woman who was in charge of their group of therapists, she came one day to see him. And she said, with his reactions, like, you just don't do it for 15 minutes and then you're done till the next session. You got to do this every day. And of course he wasn't going to do it. And the guy was an athlete. The guy was athletic. He won a basketball scholarship to LSU. I mean, you're not, this guy had pretty well put together. And she said to me, she took me aside. She said, I hate to tell you this. She says, I've been doing this for a long, long time. She said, you got your hands full with this one. She said, he's not going to do it. She could just tell from his actions, his lack of action, that she said, he's not going to do it. And I said, oh, really? She said, yeah. She said, you're really going to have your hands full. And she was right. Because anytime he would go into the hospital, when they send you the rehab, he wouldn't do the rehab. So they would discharge him. They'd say, look, you can't stay. You got to do the rehab. Or there's plenty of people in line waiting for your spot. So it was just wasn't going to do it.
Well, I'm glad you're appreciated now by your daughter and your husband and your grandchildren.
I really am very well appreciated. And it's my joy. Like I said, I have never been happier. I have never been this happy since when I was raising my children. So it's been 50 years. And I've got it. That was the happiest time in my life, raising my children. And now I get to do it again. And the joy is that, I get the good part of the day.
And so many people my age and your age don't want to take care of their grandchildren.
Oh, I know a lot. A lot of them say, I don't know how, first of all, they say, I don't know how you're doing it. Being the age I am. And I said, well, because I can do it because of them. My grandson, who's 7, my daughter's talking about, summer camp for him. She says, what do you want to do? He's athletic. Do you want to go to sports camp? Do you want to do this? He says, Mom, do I have to go to camp for the summer? Why can't I just go stay with Grandma? We can bond.
That's probably what he needs to do then.
Well, it's what he wants to do, but he would be bored. How do you say? Grandma can't keep him, a 7-year-old, busy enough that he would be bored. So I said, you got to sign him up. I said, we can stagger it, but he really, we have such a bond. I've had him since he was 2 months old. Every day. I lived with her for 5 months. Off and on, I used to come home on the weekends so I could take care of Jer, but because she lived too far away. But I did the night feedings. I had them all day. I had them until they came home from work. So we do have a very special bond.
Yeah, that matters.
He says,
the grandkids that I babysat and gave the bottle to and changed the diapers. It bonds you more than the ones you just see at holidays. And
right. Well, both of them, they've been with me since they were 2 months. Their mother would drop them off at 8 o'clock in the morning and pick them up at 5. So she's just as much bonded with me as he is, but he's a lot more, I don't know, his personality is, he's very sensitive, and his age too, I guess, has a lot to do with it. But he says, Grandma, I have it figured out. I'm going to be 20 when I'm 27, you're going to be 101. And I'm going to buy you a house when I'm 27
Oh,
because he knows my mother lived to be 101. And he figures the age I am now, the age he is, he knows that by the time he's 27, he said, you'll be 101 and I'm going to buy you a new house.
You got to wait till you're 101.
Well, he figures by 27, he'll be able to get the money, but
That's sweet.
he is planning, he's planning ahead for grandma. So I really want to be here for them. I feel my daughter, my granddaughter was born the day after my birthday. I'll be 81 on April 6th. She was born on April the 7th. But my daughter went into labor on my birthday. And I prayed, I said, please don't let her be born on my birthday. She needs her own day.
Oh.
And my thinking is, when I pass, that'll be a bittersweet moment. How do you celebrate your daughter's birthday or your birthday when your mom passed on that day? So by about 15 minutes, she got her own day.
That's awesome.
So I didn't want them to feel sad, if she was born on my birthday, because, I'll be gone.
We all will. We all will.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But we won't be gone. We'll just be gone from Earth. We'll be somewhere else.
We'll be able to watch what's going on, and help. I
Yeah.
really believe
I believe us grandmothers become our grandchildren's guardian angels. Because so many NDEs, who do they see? They see grandma or they grandpa, but usually it's grandma.
I can't wait to watch all your NDEs. I mean, I get mesmerized and I stay up much too late watching them because I can't go to bed. So,
I fall asleep listening to NDEs myself sometimes.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah. Put me to sleep. Yeah.
I've been so fascinated with the afterlife for a long time, but since I had my near death, I bought several books just to see how other people, what they experience, because I know we're all different. Mine is different because I didn't get to go see those fields and all those things. I really had I think my near death was so fast. And it was fast because I just had this choice: do I stay or do I go? And that happened in probably a split second. I don't know. It seems like it did, but it was still an incredible experience. I didn't see a lot of things that others see, and I am so fascinated by their experiences. I love hearing them. Thank you for doing this or having this. I don't even know how I found you, but I did. I guess I was supposed to.
Yeah. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. I hope I didn't talk too much.
No, you didn't. No, I enjoyed it.
I appreciate being able to share it because to me it's a gift to be able to share this gift. And thank you for what you do. And I'll be watching you a lot. Thank you. And you have the rest of the day.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye.